When control is brought to emotion, power is brought to your life. How many times has what we've felt impeded our judgments? How many times have these feelings infuriated us with anger, only to have negative consequences and regret? Hi guys, my name is Aviu, and I'm currently a student at both the University of Sunshine Coast and the University of New England. I'm filming this video today as part of assessment for one of my psychology units in which I'm undertaking this semester. And the topic area in which I'll be focusing this around is the use of sports and physical activity as a tool to aid in the control of emotion, particularly that of aggression. So simply put, I'll be discussing the already researched basic effects and resultant mood and behavioural tendencies in which different natured sports and physical activity have on human psychology. I'll aim to do this by primarily comparing aggressive contact sports to that of non-aggressive non-contact in hope of providing some clarification as to their influence on the way we behave. So, does participation in violent sports make us more angry and violent in everyday life? Or is it actually a means of releasing our aggression in a relatively safe and controlled way? Now, psychology is extraordinarily complex, as no two people are the same and will not react or experience the same effect from a scenario or treatment. The human mind is not black and white, with each being complexly unique, as quoted by Steven Pinker, in that it is indeed misleading to essentialize entire society as if it were a single mind. From a biopsychology perspective, regular physical activity in general is shown by numerous epidemiological data and studies, for example that of Blumenthal-Groot, to have a strong positive link between mood and exercise, particularly the trend of lower rates of depression and mood swings. Biochemically, there are quite a few reasons for exercise changing mood. For example, increased neurotransmitters such as serotonin and brain-derived neurotrophic factor, as well as the ever so famous endorphins. Endorphins are endogenous opioid neuropeptides, with beta endorphins, for example, being incredibly strong and one of 20 types responsible for blocking pain and feeling pleasure. The hypothalamus region is responsible for many things, including emotional response and processing, and is part of the brain's limbic system, an area rich in opioid receptors. Thence, when endorphins reach these receptors, a person experiences feelings of pleasure and a sense of satisfaction. There has been much debate as to whether one's involvement in specifically violent sports, such as boxing, mixed martial arts, and even aggressive contact sports such as rugby, develop, by virtue, a behavioural trend of aggression and violence in everyday life. The philosopher Epictetus once said that, if you do not wish to be prone to anger, do not feed the habit. Give it nothing which may tend to its increase. Assentingly, the interactional approach of personality trait theory outlines the inclination of persons who possess aggressive traits and exhibit such behaviour when placed in aggressive situations. Complementary to this concept of aggressive sport teaching violent behaviour is that it is in compliance with one of the major outlining principles of the behavioural perspective of human psychology, and that behaviour is learnt. A 1985 Segrave et al. Study found exponentially higher incidences of violence among youth whom engaged in contact sport compared to sports of a non-violent nature. Again, further supporting this notion are the present statistically overwhelming figures of higher rates of contact sport, athlete violence, and abuse lawsuits in contrast to non-contact athletes. Examples of high-profile cases include that of Mike Tyson, Floyd Mayweather, Greg Bird, and John Koppenhaver, just to name a few. From the other end of the spectrum, however, one could argue that the indirect release of aggression via the means of sports and physical activity within a controlled environment, in fact, lessens the tendency to act out and lose control. As stated by Yanakis and Melnick, an athlete with a sound mind is able to differentiate between environment and scenarios and know what behaviour is acceptable, as well as possessing greater control over their aggression and emotion in general, as this is a quality and skill in which they've had to practice time and time again whilst partaking in sports. Furthermore, Nixon discusses that rather than participation in aggressive sport itself creating aggressive everyday behaviour, the issue may be in the underlying motivational factor of the individual themselves and their need for competence and to prove their worth through the value of toughness. Hence their participation in sport of such nature to begin with. Ronald B. Woods makes the point that in many of these incidences of recorded violence, neglected is the fact of provocation. People generally associate the athlete or person to have a more so violent nature due to their participation in aggressive competitive sport, and thus may target and provoke them for their own means of competence. However, one clear fact is that regular physical exercise in general does biochemically affect emotion in a positive manner, and by virtue aid in the control/dulling of anger. Yet ultimately, as far as the literature goes into the matter of whether aggressive/violent sports in particular lead to such everyday behaviour, there is much debate with theories and evidence for both sides of the argument. Thence, in order to truly find the answer, it is up to the individual to determine and evaluate their feelings and behaviour whilst engaging in regular aggressive/violent physical activity, and whether it has influenced their behaviour and general emotions to everyday life in a negative and aggressive manner. Thank you for watching.